Hey man, welcome to the channel, A Pilgrim's Progress. I'm Ben Johnson, the Pilgrim in Residence here. It's a strange concept, a pilgrim in residence. I think pilgrims are supposed to be going somewhere, and they are. But to a pilgrim, going someplace and the process of going there and the place that you want to arrive at, it's all the same. And so it is with me. I'm a child sex abuse survivor in search of healing. I'm on the path to the Western lands. That's my own metaphor for that, for healing, for where I want to be, the place of peace and happiness. Eudaimonia, to use a Greek word, eudaimonia, that means a good spirit. And this channel is about that. Today, though, is about one of the ways that you can talk about healing without talking about healing at all, without using that word, except for this part right here. Because the word healing is a stumbling block for a lot of people. It would have been a stumbling block to me 10 or 15 years ago. The first time I saw a psychotherapist about 15 years ago, the word healing would have been a stumbling block to me. I wouldn't have liked it. And that's not true now. Now I'll take help anywhere I can get it. If I call up a witch doctor and he says, ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang, ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. If I think it's going to get me further down the road to the Western lands, I'll write it down and I'll say it every night before I go to bed. I don't care. I don't care where it comes from. I'll take it. If it's healing, if it makes me better and stronger and more the me that I want to be before I hit the dirt at the end of my trail on the end of my time on the trail, then I'll take it. I don't care what it says. But the most important thing of all is that somehow or another, you get on that trail to the Western lands yourself and you start trying to rebuild your Jenga Tower. Because that's what we're going to talk about today instead of healing is Jenga Towers. You know the game, Jenga. Made of these wooden blocks, like 3 blocks, and then 3 blocks the other way on top of it, then 3, then like this, like it's a bitsy spider going up that water spout. And the way you play the game is each person slides out one of the blocks and then puts it on top. And then the next person slides out a block and puts it on top. And you do this until the tower falls down. That's Jenga. You start the game with the tower, one nice, solid piece. Think about that Jenga tower as your psyche, yourself. Not just your brain that you do your thinking, your important thinking with, but all of your feelings, your heart, your soul, your psyche, the you that makes you you. Your soul, your psyche. That's a Jenga tower. Let's picture it like that. And in some perfect world, we would all emerge from our childhood and early adolescence with a Jenga tower that's all in one piece. Ain't none of us live in that perfect world, at least not if Buddha is to be believed. Existence is suffering, it ends when you're dead. Wide agreement on that. No one gets out of childhood and early adolescence with a totally intact Jenga tower. And if you did, that would probably be its own problem. But a little something happens to you, things don't go the right way for you in a significant way, you take off a block. Now the tower is not as solid as it was. The blocks don't go out of the game, remember? No. The blocks come back later in life as coping mechanisms, and they go on top. And every block that goes on top raises the center of gravity of that tower and makes it a little ricketier. A few more things happen. You take a few more things out. You put them on top. Everybody's got blocks taken out of their Jenga tower and put on top. That's how you know you're you. That's what it is to be alive. Now, the problem comes in when you got a lot of blocks taken out. Say you don't have enough food to eat, or you have worry about where you're going to sleep as a child, or your physical safety. Those are blocks all coming out, and they're going on top. Maybe you were beaten as a child. Those are blocks. Maybe you were beaten by a family member. People who loved you were also the people that caused you the most harm in life. Those are a lot of blocks coming out. Bad news for you, they're coming out from way in the bottom. You don't want to take too many blocks out of the bottom. But when you have harm caused to you by your immediate family members, such as I did, those blocks are coming down way at the bottom. And when they go up, they're going to be extra rickety. Now, you can have a Jenga tower that looks more like Swiss cheese. It looks like the architect spent way too much time being creative over how to get this thing to stay together. We just want old school brutalism. Give me a poured concrete slab. That's what I want. I don't want Frank Gehry giving me a thing all made out of curved chopsticks. No, that's what I might have ended up with, but I want something nice and solid. But you're going to have whatever Jenga tower you end up with. So if you go past a certain point in here, relax. Don't make it harder than it has to be. It's just an idea, just an image. Take what you need and leave the rest, as they say in the rooms of recovery. Take what you need and leave the rest. It's just an idea. You can go past a certain point where all of those blocks that you put up on top, just keeping that thing afloat is driving your whole program. You look around you and you see other people look like they still have their Jenga blocks are all in one piece. They're zipping around. It's easy. Grab the whole thing and move it around. Yours is 10 foot tall. It's the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You can't even look at it wrong. A lunar eclipse will knock it down. That kind of Jenga tower, the life that led up to that, and a person that has a Jenga tower like that, like yours truly, like this guy with borderline personality disorder, complex PTSD, developmental PTSD, others. If you got a Jenga tower like that, you might be a war zone kid. That's what I call it. When the childhood that you came from was less like a factory that makes perfectly assembled Jenga towers with a few pieces missing, but basically all in one piece. If your childhood was like a war zone where maybe your Jenga tower just got thrown down a garbage chute and you had to pick the pieces out of the trash at the bottom of the elevator. I don't know. You came out of a war zone. Your Jenga tower is Swiss cheese all the way up, rickety. And you don't even know it's rickety because you don't know it's a Jenga tower until you get to be deep into adulthood and you wonder why your life is so hard, like this guy has. You might be a war zone kid. It might be a literal war zone. It's a metaphor that I use to capture what that's like. Because if you were a war zone kid, if your Jenga tower was like that, then what your adult life is probably going to be like is a lot of managing this swaying Jenga tower and not much of you doing the thing that you could do with an intact Jenga tower. That's a war zone kid. And I'm a war zone kid. And then my Jenga tower just fell apart. It just collapsed. Many of us war zone kids have lives that end in jails, institutions, and death. I'm an addict. I learned that phrase in the rooms of recovery where there are people desperate enough that they use the word healing. That's a war zone kid. When my Jenga tower collapsed, maybe 10 years ago, I'll say, roughly, good enough. When my Jenga tower collapsed, it just, in a way, you lose all hope. You lose all hope. There's nothing. I've been riding this thing out. I'm a IV drug using addict from way back when I was a kid. I know how to string stuff out and just make do. You can't make do anymore. Your Jenga tower's in a big jumbled mess on the floor. Mine was. Maybe only half of yours fell out. There are many war zone kids. The war didn't break out when they were 5 or 4 or 3 like it did for me. Many people live in peacetime until they're 12 or 13. A lot of war zone kids are women. And a lot of those women had a life that changed abruptly when they got to be those ages because suddenly they became interesting to men and boys. A lot of war zone kids had a life that was fairly solid until something happened. And then all hell broke loose and the top half of that Jenga tower is just gone. You know, like mine. I mean, I'm bulimic. I was a cutter and a burner as a kid, binge eater, masked all that as best I could, utterly convinced that I was absolutely nothing, no good, not eligible to be a man, not eligible for anything. Had to pretend foot on the gas, pretending. What would I do if I was a human being? That ain't no way to live. Except you can do it for a long, long time. You can do it for 35 or 40 years. Then it all falls apart. Just collapses. Won't work anymore. It's a famous story about I think it's about Trotsky. Where he was a Russian revolutionary, and he lived a long time in fear of the secret police. In the dead of night. When am I going to get woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by the secret police in the dead of night? And it finally happened. And he wrote his pals letters after that. He said, "This is amazing. I've been afraid. I haven't had a good night's sleep in 20 years. Afraid of the secret police. Last night, slept like a baby. I'm locked here in this room. I got books. I got paper. It's amazing." Now, there's a strong element of that feeling with me in my life when the whole thing fell apart, because it was beyond obvious to me that I just was not going to be able to do life how I had been doing it. Something was going to have to be different. And I'm a father with kids. When my Jenga tower fell apart, I wasn't the only one the pieces fell on. I drove past a mining facility the other day, and there was a sign by the road next to a giant pile of gravel, a big pile of gravel. And there's a sign that said, "Warning, engulfment hazard." I've been in a lot of weird industrial facilities. I've never been warned about an engulfment hazard. But when you're a grown adult with a full life, with a family, with all that, and your Jenga tower collapses, everyone around you is in severe danger of the engulfment hazard, which is you. And that's when you might start learning about phrases like intergenerational trauma. And there's something gratifying about that when you see, that's why I am like this. There's all this Encyclopedia Brown mystery stage that you go through of like, why am I this way and all that. You turn to the back of the Encyclopedia Brown mystery and it says, you can do all the thinking about why you're like that you want, and it's very fruitful, but at the end of the day, you are like that, and that's what you're going to have to deal with. Your problem is that you are like that. Your problem is the Jenga tower that's in a mess on the floor, not whether you use the word healing to describe it. You can use any word, no words at all. I got some metaphors that next time I'm going to use one about lemons and hot rods. And then I got one about prepping up for a championship fight in the UFC, if you don't like healing. Nothing wrong with healing. It doesn't mean that the word healing is the only one you have to use or that that's the good one. But it made a lot of difference to me in my life when I embraced the idea of healing and started to think of it like an athlete with an injury. If you break your leg, you're going to need that leg to heal, assuming that you want to do stuff in life that requires the use of two legs. You're going to need to put the two ends, if you're lucky, all you're going to have to do is put the two ends of the bone together and it'll heal up and don't move it. Your bone might be a splintered mess. There might be plates and screws involved. That's fine. You need to get that leg healed. If your Jenga tower is collapsed, you got to get it rebuilt. That's what people are talking about when they use the word healing. If using the word healing makes you feel like you've got to leave at least one of your testicles by the door, don't use it. Don't use it. Think about rehab. Think about PT, physical therapy. Think about building that Jenga tower. Think about turning your hot rod, your lemon, into a hot rod. Think about intergenerational abuse and intergenerational trauma. And the fact that if you're an adult and your Jenga tower collapsed, and you have a family, you have children, part of your Jenga tower collapsed on them. And unless you want your kids to learn what an engulfment hazard is by having to spend their life crawling out from under you, get to work helping, because when you put your Jenga tower together, some of the blocks that you're going to use to put that tower together, you're going to take from on top of your kids. How about that? Go with that. Rebuild your Jenga tower. Because when your Jenga tower collapses and you got no hope that you're going to be able to string it out any further, that's the moment, that's your Trotsky moment. It already happened. The thing that you've been living your whole life afraid of, that your life's going to fall apart, it just done happened right there in your face. It's over. It happened. Done. Ixnay. You ain't going one more step riding that jumbled up Jenga pile. It ain't going to work. You're going to have to do something new. And if you're a war zone kid and your Jenga tower's falling apart, now's a great time to start your own pilgrimage. Start the path to the Western lands, the land of a good spirit. Eudaimonia, a good spirit where all the pieces are lined up together. They have a word in Greek for a thing which is made of parts, but when the parts are together, it forms a whole. That word in Greek is cosmos. And you are a cosmos made of those bricks in that Jenga tower. And whatever amount of your life you spend managing that swaying Frank Gehry looking modern architecture Jenga tower, every day you spend trying to keep that puppy together is a day that you're not spending rebuilding it from the ground up to give you a cosmos, a psyche, a whole. The whole that is you comes from those jumbled parts. The psyche that is you is made of those jumbled parts and a mess on the ground. Psyche. Psyche is the Greek word for butterfly. Butterflies are not born butterflies. Butterflies are born caterpillars. And the caterpillar has to die before the butterfly can live. That caterpillar is that swaying Jenga tower, swaying in the breeze. And when it collapses and goes down to nothing, and your life turns to goo, that goo right there, that goo is where that butterfly is going to come from. Not someone else's goo. They got their own goo. That goo is what you're going to put back together to make that Jenga tower. And it can be yours. And with that Jenga tower, you're going to feel like you're you. The you that you can be right now. It's a good time to join the Trail to the Western Lands. We need more pilgrims. That's why I'm doing this. Because my life is immeasurably better because someone used the word healing to me. A creative coach I had said, "Ben, have you ever thought of healing?" And I was hostile. Me? Why? What? What are you talking about? No, was the answer. I never had. But I did then. And it's not about the word healing. It's about witnessing that Jenga tower and entertaining the idea that there was a way that I could take that Jenga tower and I could make myself out of it. But only if I dealt with the actual Jenga tower in my real life, crumbled at the feet, turned to goo. It's not clear how things can turn to goo and crumble at the same time, but it's a metaphor for this. So that's today's lesson on board games for Warzone kids. Jenga's one of the favorites. We always have one around. So it's a good day to start your trail to the Western lands. I think that's it for today. Go out there and get a few more miles in before bed on the trail to the Western lands. We need more pilgrims. We need all we can get. If you like this, click the thing, subscribe, and send this along to someone else that you think might like it. We need more Warzone kids. Join the channel, and we'll see you on the other side, cowboy.